Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. I'm Courtney.
And I'm Teddy, and in this video we're going to be looking at fall fragrances, fall designer fragrances to be specific. So Courtney has 5, I have 5, as people in the Midwest and in a kind of climate where things get cold earlier than probably we'd like. We do have the opportunity to wear a lot of fall fragrances. So this is a genre we look at quite a bit. We picked out some of our favorites heading into fall 2022 and some new faces as well that we haven't tried as much yet, but we're excited to as the months turn here. But all right, Courtney, let's kick it off with you. Go ahead.
All right, number 1, we have none other than La Nuit de l'Homme. This is the Le Parfum version. Fresh and spicy. You get a little bit of fruity notes in here. Notes for this one, we have cardamom, lavender, cedar, bergamot, vetiver, and caraway. Again, I really think this one is kind of a spice bomb with a little hint of fruitiness in there, kind of fresh.
The pepper note is something that I picked up right away. Yes. Interesting how this was actually the first La Nuit de l'Homme that I actually owned. So, you know, something to maybe, not the conventional path, I'll say, for most people, but it's a good one. I think overlooked quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think this one also, it's one of those ones where, yes, it's a designer, but I do think it smells a little bit more elevated than maybe some might think.
Also, what I think I would say too for the La Nuit de l'Homme is maybe slightly more mature than the others, but still very good, very wearable. I think pretty much anybody can have fun with that one on the skin, no question. Okay, so next up here we have Zegna, one that's not talked about a lot. This is Intenso. So this fragrance, similar type of background you're gonna see here with some of the fragrances we're gonna go through. So cardamom, iris, tonka, cardamom and tonka being 2 things you're gonna probably see throughout this list. Lemon, orange, and pepper again. So very interesting. I wouldn't say it's similar to our previous mention when looking at La Nuit de l'Homme Le Parfum, but somewhat in the same galaxy in terms of its approach. I'm looking at some citrus here on the opening, but with that iris note and then the spices, it does take an interesting turn. Iris to me gives off more of this soapy vibe. I don't get so much of that, but it also has this like vivid, deep floral that also I can get with, get a sensation of that when smelling this one. Spices are absolutely there.
You know what? I love Zegna, and I love that one in particular. That's new to me. But what I like about that one is I feel like that would be great for transitioning into fall. So maybe these like last few weeks, we're clinging to summer. We're going into fall, like the first few weeks of fall. I think that would be a perfect one.
Because it does have like this bright effect and it has the powdery nature as well, but it's not so overpowering in that direction where I think somebody could get a lot of play out of that with that transition that you're talking about. So
and then it has the spice that comes in too, which is nice.
So very underrated one to take a look at.
Next up, one of your faves, one of my faves, one of everybody's faves. That is Maison Margiela Jazz Club. This one is the sexy, boozy guy. Maybe we don't want to describe a guy as boozy.
Sexy and boozy.
Sexy guy sitting at the bar, sipping on a drink. I think the name is a really great representation of the smell, actually. It's boozy, tobacco, masculine, bad boy vibes. Notes for this one, we have rum, tobacco leaf, vanilla, styrax, pink pepper, clary sage, and neroli.
I always describe this one as having just some nonchalance to it. It's just effortlessly cool. Yeah. It can maybe be a bit much for certain people that don't like these tobacco and maybe boozy-oriented fragrances. That's a strange combination and can be somewhat difficult for individuals to maybe wear. This is done very well, though. It's not overly synthetic. I think this is more of an elevated designer. It's one that I remember going in Sephora one day, and I just, I always loved the packaging of this whole replica line, and it just kind of, captivates you and you're like, oh, I want to spray all those. This was the one that just stood out immediately. I think a lot of people like By the Fireplace. This is my favorite from their line.
By the Fireplace is much more smoky. I prefer the booziness of this one in comparison to the smokiness of By the Fireplace. So kind of, take a gauge on which one you tend to lean towards, but I prefer this one 100 times over.
And what I'll say also about that comparison, just because I think a lot of people do think about that, Jazz Club to me is more wearable. By the Fireplace is almost like that kind of eclectic art piece that maybe it looks cool in the museum, but you don't want to have on your wall in your house. Like, it's one of those things, like, you like the concept of it, but it's harder to pull off. I think Jazz Club, exact antithesis of that. So next up here, we have Guerlain L'Homme Ideal. This fragrance is simply fantastic.
You smell?
It took me too long to smell this. And this whole line, I've been familiar with. I've never purchased a full bottle of it until more recently, but it's just divine. It's fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
Tonka, almond, orange, leather, vetiver. It has some sweetness to it, but it's not overwhelmingly sweet. Some brightness, but just creamy, powdery, mysterious, masculine. It just has all of these elements and it's just crafted in a way that I think anybody could enjoy this. It's not overwhelming in one direction. It's just an easy thing to grab during this time of year. And this is, it's one of my favorite fall fragrances. I'm excited to wear this year for designer things.
It has some familiarity of like a typical fall fragrance, like what you picture in your head. But then the more you smell it, it does have some like different twists and turns that I think do give it that mysterious type of vibe. It's a little bit different. There's something there.
The opening is pretty sweet to me on my nose. I mean, I don't know if that's just like this creamy like tonka, and then you get some combination of like that orange, there's a very prominent almond note here, which I do get. I think it's a little bit overblown based on what I see people talking about this, but it's a fantastic fragrance. I am all for this fragrance. I'm on the hype train. I mean, there's so many now just different flankers to this line. This is kind of that original DNA, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, I love it. All right, next up we have the cutest little bottle ever, Moschino Toy Boy. This one I think is pretty versatile, one of the more versatile on this list, but I think it works really great for the fall because of that pink pepper in there, the nutmeg.
It's got the spices going on here.
Yeah, it's got the spices going on. So notes for this one, you have rose, pink pepper, pear, nutmeg, elemi, and magnolia. So it's unique, it's dynamic, it's a bit like enthusiastic almost with that rose note. A little tender playfulness is what I like to say.
Yeah, this is one where when you smell this one, you're gonna know if it's for you or not for you. For me, I don't wear this one. I don't think it's not something I would grab too often, but it's well done. And also when you're talking about the world of designer fragrances, when it's just copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, this one is not guilty of that.
Very unique.
So next up here, Kenzo Jungle Homme.
Nice bottle.
Yes, very 90s bottle, capped off with a zebra cap, so very on brand there. But this is a very strange fragrance. It's a fragrance that's not going to be for everybody, but if you're a fan of these warm, spicy fragrances, this is one to check out. Nutmeg, cinnamon, cardamom, guaiac wood, sandalwood, lime, and cedar.
Yeah, this one is so interesting because of that lime note, I think. Add something very weird to this.
It's a strange just combination.
Yeah.
It's not overwhelmingly spicy though.
No.
I think of like Costume National, like Homme, and like how like it has like this clove note, which I think is a little bit more abrasive. It's still very wearable. This is not as intense. That also comes into play when you're talking about the performance department, but still is enough of a slap in the face. It is warm, it's spicy. This was released in 1998, so it is not gonna be, it doesn't feel like a new age fragrance, but it doesn't feel dated also. It has this dusty kind of nature too, so there's a lot going on here. And I think people maybe look at this and they expect like this animalic fragrance. It's not that. It's more of just this really warm, spicy. I imagine like the turn of the holiday season, this is where this one could really get a lot of play.
Yeah, you said dusty, and that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, not in a bad way, because you hear dusty and you're like, ooh.
It almost reminds me of opening up like this old book with like this mystery to it, and you're just kind of getting lost in the pages. You open it up, and somehow you don't know how that smell got there. But there's just years of maybe just being in the attic for some reason. I mean, now I'm probably describing this and scaring some people away, but give it a shot. If you're a daring individual like warm and spicy fragrances, Kenzo Jungle Homme should be on your list.
All right, next up we have Carolina Herrera Privé. So again, this is another boozy one, kind of similar to Jazz Club, but replace that tobacco note with a leather note. And I do think this one is actually way more leather, I would say, than boozy. But notes for this one, you have leather, whiskey, tonka bean, pomelo, lavender, benzoin, woody notes, and grapefruit. So explosive on the whiskey.
Sure.
First smelling it, but there's that strong leather there too.
When it's in a flask bottle, you're expecting some boozy notes, and you know, it does deliver on that front. But I think, as you mentioned, it is potentially more leather than that. Bad boy vibe, probably, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Leather jacket, date night.
Or just like a really distressed chair, you know, like in a bar. Like that's kind of what it smells like, you know. But but it's cool. I like it. I'll just say this. I don't expect to go apple picking with this fragrance. This is more for the evenings. So do the apple picking in the afternoon. Pull this out at night. So next up here, we have Encre Noire La Extreme. This is from Lalique. So we've talked about the Encre Noire line quite a bit on this channel. Now, they are polarizing, but for those that like the DNA, I think really like the DNA. It's kind of you're either on one side of the aisle. You have to kind of decide.
I love it.
I'm surprised, to be honest with you, because you're not the biggest fan of the other Encre Noirs. This one I would say is potentially the hardest to wear out of all of them. But what I would say to describe this one, you had Encre Noire Sport, which is more of like a watery type of aquatic version of the Encre Noire DNA.
Yeah.
This is more of your even more woodsy and then also smoky type of element. So vetiver, cypress, incense, resin, benzoin, and sandalwood. But again, I think this really is that smoky note. You get the woods, the vetiver, cypress. It's there in, very easy to detect. It's no question. You smell this and you're like, okay, this is Encre Noire. Also, I would say maybe the hardest to wear, but for the fall season, it's very, very good. It's
very fitting.
Very fitting. You're also going to maybe have a level of sophistication. The other ones are, of course, very sophisticated, and I think smell more expensive than they are. I think this one's even more extreme in that regard.
It's a bit more refined smelling, I think. It smells like a guy with a really well-maintained beard.
I can see that.
You know what I mean? Like, does all the things, uses a comb, the moisturizer, the oil.
Beard oil is in no limited supply.
Like, you have a really great beard if you wear this one. So if that sounds like you, pick up Encre Noire. All right, another one of the faves, that is Prada Luna Rossa Black. This is the fragrance that I recommend to everyone. Anytime someone messages me on Instagram, Courtney, I need a sexy date night fragrance. Courtney, I want to impress the ladies. This is the one that I recommend because I think it is mass appealing, number one. Number two, super sexy, great for those intimate moments, a dinner date, a first date. Notes for this one, we have coumarin, amber, angelica, musk, patchouli, and bergamot. It's this powdery, mystery, love this one.
You have this kind of creamy, powdery wave with the coumarin, and then you have amber. It's very good. It's very
Love
good.
it.
It's a little powdery. Powdery, you have some musk in there, so for certain people it might not be their jam, but if you want that type of powdery effect without having the overly sweet kind of gourmand, kind of hybrid that comes with that, the give and take of that type of genre, this is a good middle ground I think people will really like. And I've always seen that women have really strong reactions to this one.
Oh yeah.
And last one here, we have Hugo Boss Bottled. I think we've mentioned pretty much every single flanker for this one. I just like this DNA a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. You were talking about right before I started. I'm like, this is the apple picking fragrance, and you're right.
This is the fragrance you take your girlfriend to. You don't want to go, but you take her anyway because you're a great guy. She gets herself an apple fritter, and she's in a good mood. Okay, no one's in a bad mood wearing this.
I agree. It's bright. It's inviting. It's not going to be offensive to anybody. For the defining characteristics here, apple, cinnamon, vanilla. That's really what you're getting here for the most of the fragrance, especially when it opens up. Strong apple note, get some cinnamon, some spices, and then vanilla, just mild sweetness. And cedar, sandalwood, and also a plum note in this one, which is also kind of an interesting change. But for me, it's just that apple note, cinnamon, vanilla. You think about these things, it just goes hand in hand with the fall season. It's
not super sweet though. I don't want the vanilla to scare some people off thinking it's like, an apple pie or something like that. It's more of like less vanilla. The vanilla is very faint, I think.
It's very lifted.
Yes.
This one almost has like an airy effect to it, but the fall feelings, it's just there in droves.
All right, guys, that is all we have for 10 awesome designer fall fragrances. Let us know if we missed any down in the comments. What is your all-time favorite fall fragrance? Would love to hear what all of you guys think down below.
But guys, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Really would appreciate that as well. But guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Be well, and we'll see you all very soon.